Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
I am
afternoon.
Erica Branch. It is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023, and we are at the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Public Services / Planning and Emergency Solutions Grants Application Workshop. The Director of Planning and Development, Susan Campbell, is here and she will give you a few words.
Thank you, Erica. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this year. And thank for those of you who were with us this past year. We thank you for your partnership and the work that you're doing. As many of you know, we are now at a point where the president recently declared an official end to the presidential disaster of a pandemic. And many of the programs that we were in design in response to hardships from the pandemic will be coming to an end in terms of their funding in the next year or two, not like today. But to that point, as a department, we've been charged with making sure that whatever programs that we are letting out for this year and henceforward have the ability to be sustained beyond the pandemic funding. We will be putting a greater emphasis on collecting metrics and beneficiary data so that we can better understand the marketplace in which we're all working and try to position everything such that it can leverage other funding that may be out there and available. So any ideas that you have for that, we're welcome to hearing those. Again, we're welcome to looking at the metrics. We found that to be extremely helpful the last 3 years as we rolled these programs out and pivoted them to the different changing needs the pandemic exposed to us. So once again, thank you for coming. And I'm not going to speak much longer because I know we have a presentation to go over a lot of this as well. So thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Susan. We'll get started with the presentation, and we are going over the Community Development Block Grant for Public Services and Planning, and also the Emergency Solutions Grants. The 2023 funding cycle updates and important information. You should know applications must be submitted via the online application submission forms. No paper copies or emailed applications would be accepted. Again, no paper copies or email applications will be accepted. Do not email saying, "Oh, Erica, would you please accept this?" or "Share what you accepted." It will not be accepted. And remember, you emailing us a copy of that application directly puts Cook County in jeopardy because we have already stated that we will not accept the email. And you sending the email asking us to go against the policy we already put forth is an issue. Okay, nonprofits may apply for one CDBG capital improvement project and one CDBG public service or planning project. And you also could apply for an ESG project as well. Otherwise, there's a limit of one funding application per grant per agency. All 2023 CDBG proposed projects must be consistent with the moving to implementation plan, which is our current consolidated plan. So if we go here, oh, my links are not working here. If I go to that link, you can see and go through and read our moving to implementation plan, which your project must be consistent with. If not, there's a portion of the application that you must select stop if you don't feel like your project is consistent. Also, you have to be consistent with our Cook County Policy Roadmap, which is found here at this link, including a focus on racial equity. It's very important that you know. At the beginning of the application, there is the first page, I believe, after you put your name On the title page, the second page is an application checklist. We want you to go through that checklist and check it off and say, yes, I have this, I have that. Because if you don't have the documents listed there at the time your application is reviewed, there will be a negative 15 points. So those of you who are new to this process, I will let you in on how the applications come in and what we do. The applications are due on March 17th by 5 p.m. Once those applications are received on Monday, we will come in, download those applications. Any application that has a stamp time at 5:01 will not be accepted. Your application will not be reviewed. Please make sure that you submit your application in enough time because computers are wonky, things happen, and you want to make sure that your application goes through without a glitch. Just a little history about the CDBG program. The Community Development Block Grant was authorized under Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. The primary objective of Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act is to develop viable urban communities. And they achieve this by providing the following, principally for persons of low and moderate income. 1, decent housing. 2, a suitable living environment. And 3, expanded economic opportunities. Please understand that no less than 70% of CDBG funds must be used to support activities that benefit low and moderate income persons. So, those of you that were here a little earlier and heard Sylvia's presentation, we received from HUD approximately $10.3 million for the Community Development Block Grant. Of that $10.3 million, only 15% of those dollars may be spent on public service. Remember that. But of that 15%, approximately $1.6 million, maybe $1.4 million, no less than 70% of that $1.4 million can be used on less than 70% of persons that are low or moderate income. So this is a grant to help rebuild and revitalize and build up those who are low and moderately income. So those of you that are hearing this presentation, we will toggle between CDBG, public service, and ESG. Those two programs are similar but very different in their own way, but we like to pair them together. So a little history on the Emergency Solutions Grants. The Emergency Solutions Grants, which I should change here, it has emergency shelter. That's the old name, but now it's Emergency Solutions. It was changed under the HEART Act of 2009. The HEART Act of 2009 amended the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Assistance Act of 1987. So now, the program in 1987 was the Emergency Shelter Grant, and it was changed to the Emergency Solutions Grants under the HEART Act of 2009. The primary change included a greater emphasis on homeless prevention, the addition of rapid rehousing, the regulatory requirements for homeless management information system use, increased emphasis on performance, and the requirement for greater coordination and collaboration between the recipient, Cook County, and our continuum of care. The regulations implementing the ESG program are found at 24 CFR Part 576. So if those of you who are looking to read more about the ESG program and to know more about the history and the amendments, please go to Google, input 24 CFR Part 576, and it will pop up. Eligible activities under the Community Development Block Grant, specifically for planning and public service projects. Plans and studies. Plans and studies activities included but not limited to comprehensive community or economic development plans and project feasibility studies. Please pay special attention here. Note, CDBG funds under this category are limited due to a regulatory cap on planning and administration. Specifically, Cook County may only utilize 20% of its annual entitlement allocation for these purposes, including internal administrative operations. So for those of you who are reading that statement and who may read it next week, once you're ready to, you're thinking about a project and you're ready to submit the project, and you're thinking, oh, I have this great planning project. Please submit it. But understand that we're sharing Cook County's Department of Planning and Development, we're sharing our administrative dollars with your planning projects. So please have that in your mind. Public service activities. Activities including but not limited to employment services, IG job training, substance abuse services, could be counseling and treatment, fair housing counseling, services for senior citizens, services for homeless persons, etc. Oh my God, there are so many different categories under public service. CDBG funds may be used to pay for labor, supplies, and material, as well as to operate or maintain the portion of a facility in which the public service is located. Think of lease costs. Think of if you have an agency that's providing after school programming and funding. The building that you're in, you may be able to pay for some lease costs for that public service that's eligible. For example, for ESG, we will discuss some eligible components and activities. A broad range of programs and activities are eligible for funding in 5 components as listed below. This is under the Emergency Solutions Grants. When you think of ESG, there are 5 components that you are eligible to apply for funding. Those 5 components are homeless prevention. This is assistance and services to prevent households from becoming homeless, households and persons. Rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing assistance can be used to help a homeless household or person move into permanent housing and achieve stability in that housing. So, to make this more, to think of it this way, homeless prevention are for persons who are housed, but their housing became unstable. It may have become unstable because the head of household has an illness. It could be because the head of the household lost their job. It could be for an event that happened that put the housing into instability. That is homeless prevention. Rapid rehousing are for persons that are literally homeless, living in places not meant for human habitability, meaning on the street. It could be persons in the shelter, in the homeless shelter. It could be persons living in their cars. Those persons are literally homeless and would be the persons that are eligible for rapid rehousing. And usually that rapid rehousing comes through an agency, and that person most likely has been working with the agency, and they may have gone through their emergency shelter program, or they may be working with them to get permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing may be an option. The third eligible component under ESG, HMIS, which is the Homelessness Management Information System. Cook County has required subrecipients to use HMIS and domestic violence services agencies to use a comparable database. It is now required by HUD. Before 2011, after the actual working regulations came out under the HEART Act, even though the HEART Act was passed in 2009, we started working with the full regulations in 2011. In 2011, it was now mandated that all agencies that are funded under ESG use the HMIS system. And HMIS is a system to track those individuals who are using homelessness services, ESG. The fourth eligible component is emergency shelter. So under emergency shelter are three categories under emergency shelter. And to put this simply to you, this category was just this component by itself was the entire ESG program prior to the HEART Act. So pre 2011, the emergency shelter program was these three categories, which include renovation, including major rehabilitation or conversion of a building to serve an emergency shelter. The emergency shelter must be owned by a government entity or private nonprofit organization. I leave this in the presentation so that you are aware. Cook County does not presently fund renovation under ESG. We do not currently fund renovation under ESG. This category is here for informational purposes only. The second category under emergency shelter are essential services, including case management, child care, education services, employment assistance, and job training, outpatient health services, legal services, life skills training, mental health services, substance abuse treatment services, transportation, and services for special populations. Shelter operations, including maintenance, rent, repair, security, fuel, equipment, insurance, utilities, again, food and furnishings, and supplies necessary for the operation of an emergency shelter. Now, the fifth component, the fifth component under the Emergency Solutions Grants is street outreach. Street outreach are essential services related to reaching out to unsheltered homeless individuals and families, connecting them with emergency shelter, housing, and critical services, and providing them with urgent, non-facility based care. So that could be your agency has an a street outreach program, and you have a case manager or your street outreach designated person. go out and say you want to go to the perimeter. The perimeter of a forest preserve. And I made sure to say perimeter. I do not advocate for you going in deep into the forest preserve unless you are truly used to doing that, and that you have maybe a sheriff accompanying you, because there can be some encampments deep into the forest preserve. Let's say you drive along the perimeter and you see some persons that may be homeless. They may be asking for money, or they may be, you may know these individuals are homeless, and you may go up to them and ask them, do they need any assistance? You may give them your card. You may offer them, your agency may have a package, could contain water, could contain warming gloves, could contain a extra shirt or extra socks, and you give it to the individual. That is a part of street outreach. Okay. Each component includes several eligible activities. Applicants may apply for funding under one or multiple components. Eligible areas under CDBG. Cook County currently receives CDBG funds as an annual entitlement allocation based on this qualification as an urban county. Cook County CDBG funds may only be utilized within the limits of the urban county. Proposed funding applications must serve suburban Cook County only, excluding the following areas within the county. We exclude those areas. Sylvia spoke to it a little earlier in the capital presentation, because they receive their own allocations from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So they receive their own CDBG allocations. The city of Chicago, Skokie, Elgin, Hoffman Estates, Mount Prospect, Berwyn, Oak Park, Evanston, Arlington Heights, Des Plaines, Palatine, Schaumburg, Cicero, and Oklahoma. If you are an agency and you have a proposed project in those areas, we will refer you to look on the website or contact that particular municipality, because they do have their own CDBG program. Eligible areas under ESG. The same premise goes in this case. The caveat is, please listen closely. If Cook County chose to, we could use ESG anywhere. But because we only have a very small amount for suburban non-entitlement Cook County, we choose to keep that funding within the borders of non-entitlement Cook County, meaning the areas of Chicago, Cicero, Evanston, and Oak Park are excluded. It is heartbreaking to do that, but we must, so that we make sure the small amount that we do receive in ESG are served for those that are in non-entitlement Cook County. Very important. Minimum and maximum thresholds requirements for CDBG, public service and planning. Public service projects. The minimum funding request is $25,000. That is the minimum funding request. The maximum funding request cap is $125,000. So let's do a quick exercise. The exercise is, I may mention earlier that, and Sylvia also mentioned that Cook County's allocation for CDBG for the upcoming 2023 funding year is approximately $10.3 million. Approximately. It's a little bit under. We only can use 15% of that amount for public service. So, say 1.5, I have to look at the exact number, so let's put it there. $1.5 million. If we funded all of the projects we usually get in, which is approximately 60, we get approximately 60 to 75 projects a year. We could not fund all of those projects at $100,000. We may barely fund them all for $25,000. So, of the 60 projects that we received in 2022, we were only able to fund 35 of the 60. And those varied from 25,000 up to 100,000. And I believe we may had 2 agencies that we funded at $100,000. I just want to give you a landscape of what we're dealing with the amount of funding that we have and the amount of projects that we get. So this is very, very competitive, okay? It's a note here. Based on the nature and anticipated impacts of the proposed project, economic development projects may not be subject to the funding request maximums noted above at the discretion of Cook County. Prospective applicants interested in submitting economic development proposals are strongly encouraged to contact Cook County for guidance regarding project eligibility prior to submission. Minimum and maximum threshold requirements under ESG. Very similar to CDBG. The minimum application is $25,000. Can be spread across multiple activities and components. At a minimum, the applicant must certify at least a dollar for dollar match. ESG is very different from CDBG. Sylvia mentioned that CDBG does not require a match, but we do like to see a match. It'd be great if your agency could. With ESG, it is non-negotiable. You must submit a 1-to-1 match. If you are requesting $25,000, you must have a $25,000 match. The maximum. Please pay attention. No more than 20% of the applicant's total budget taken from your latest audit submitted may be funded as an ESG grant. For example, if an organization's operating budget was $100,000, the highest ESG allocation they will get from Cook County is $20,000. This is not a capacity building grant, nor is it a startup grant. Your program must be up and running, and you must demonstrate to us that you've run a program similar to the one that you are requesting funding for in the past. If you just said, okay, you know what? There's so much help that people need out here. I think I want to start a homelessness shelter. This is not the grant for you. This is not a startup grant. You must demonstrate to us, A, that you have an audit, that you have financials that we can look at, and we can determine, are you able to handle these federal dollars? No more than 50% of the total award would be used for staff salaries. Again, this is not a capacity building grant. If you have a program running and you like, you know what, I really need to hire like 3 more persons, that's great. But this grant is not only will not be used to build that capacity. If we like your program, we think your program is great and can be beneficial, we will award it, and of course, we will pay for some staff costs, but it will not be more than 50% of the entire award. Combined, the components of street outreach and emergency shelter will be capped at the greater of 60% of the total grant for the program year or the total amount obligated to homeless assistance from program year. So, what that means is we will be watching all of the emergency shelter component applications and all of the street outreach applications. When we award those and put those together, that can be no more than 60% of the entire ESG application for that program year. No more than 6 total positions will be funded through staff salaries for ESG. No more than 6, please do not ask. We will say no. Application evaluation criteria. Within the application guide, please, please, please study the guide. The guide gives so much information, and the guide will tell you everything here that I may be missing, plus the information that I'm giving you here in this presentation. The guide will give you so much more. And please keep the guide next to you while you're filling out the application. You would need it, okay? Applications are reviewed by Cook County staff to determine the completeness, eligibility, and consistency with Cook County's current consolidated plan. Applications are reviewed and recommended by means of a competitive application evaluation process. The application guide lists how you will be evaluated and where the points are coming from. So please study your guide. A well-written application is no guarantee of funding, but you should make every effort to make sure your application is complete and concise. Again, complete and concise. But don't give a one-sentence answer for a question that may need a paragraph. That's not complete or concise. That may not be looked at favorably. Please note, the individual application score is the primary factor in determining the recommended awards, but it is not the only factor that will be considered during the county's application review process. I want to say that those of you who are returning applicants or are returning, you may have a grant right now. In my opinion, it's harder for you guys because you must have performed well and have demonstrated that you are able to handle the project. It must be shown by the work from the last year. Those of you who are new, you will have to demonstrate through your application that you have completed a project like the one that you are applying for before. You must find a way to articulate that within the application. Okay? Both the CDBG, Planning and Public Service, and ESG applications are online at www.cookcounty.gov. If we go here, this is the application for CDBG here. I'm sorry, that's the application grant page. So you must fill out the grant page. The actual application for public service and planning is here. Well, I'm sorry, this is the grant page. I don't know why I read that wrong. So we have to enter this information here. Then you must download the actual application PDF here. And this is the actual application for public services and planning. Please go through the application. This is the checklist here that I referred to earlier. Please make sure that all of the items that you need that's requested here are included. You will lose 15 points for each of the above items that are missing. The applications are due on Friday, March 17th, 2023 by 5 p.m. Applications received after this date and time will not be accepted. No exceptions. Okay. Here is the project consistent with the moving to implementation Cook County's 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan. If you select no, stop. No need to fill out the rest of the application because it won't be accepted. Does the requested CDBG funding replace other funding for the same services? If you select yes, stop. Again, we want to make sure that this funding is used with a variety of different funding sources to provide the maximum amount of services. So if you lost your grant with someone else and you want to replace it with CDBG, that is an issue. Why did you lose the funding? What happened? Etc. You must meet a national objective, and you must demonstrate a benefit to low and moderate income persons. Okay. This is the rest of the application. I won't go through every single question. Please make sure this application is complete. Okay. I wanted to show you guys. Okay, this is a template, a sample resolution. You may have heard earlier Sylvia say this is just a sample. The way I think about it is this language must be present in whatever resolution you submit. So my advice is to use the template. That's what I would do. If you use the template, you ensure that you submitted the exact language that we want to see. And this is a sample certification, again, a template. Okay, the matching fund certification. If you have a match for CDBG, please let us know where the match is coming from and that it will be available throughout the duration of the grant. Okay, I'm going to go back because it's something I need to show you on the ESG application. Very, very important. Okay, first thing, The ESG application guide, please pay very special attention to, and I'm going to open it now. In the appendix, page 14 or 15. Let's see. You have to certify to Cook County that your agency does not engage in religious activities through this particular work. These funds are federal funds, and you may not prohibit anyone from partaking in, say you were funded with ESG and you have a project, and your agency was funded by a Baptist church. That's fine, no problem. But your agency itself must be a separate 501c3 first. Two, you may not prohibit anyone services because they're Catholic or Muslim. If you do that, we will come after the agency for our money back, because then we will have to pay HUD back. That is highly prohibited. But you all knew that. I just want to make sure. Okay. I need to go back to the application itself. In the ESG application itself, there is a page that we ask you to sign. I have to find where it is. Where is it? Here on page 19, we ask that you sign. That you will not prohibit anyone from because of their religious affiliation. Okay. So now we're going to move into questions. That is
Erica, would you like me to read you the questions?
Yes, please. That'll be a great help.
I can do that, but I thought you might also want to introduce your staff.
Sure, of course, of course.
They're online.
Those staff who are here from the public service, CDBG public service side. Elizabeth Gilbert, if she's here, please come on camera and wave. Hi, Elizabeth. If you are funded, you may, Elizabeth Gilbert may be your project planner. We also have Pam White, who is another project planner under public service. And if you are funded, you may have Pam White, or you may have myself. If you are funded under ESG, you will definitely have me under ESG. Thanks, Cheryl.
And if you're in trouble, you have me, and that's not a good thing.
Now you know.
All right, to the questions. All right. Are faith-based entities eligible? I think you answered that, but you may want to go at it again.
Faith-based entities are only eligible if they have a separate 501c3. You may not be under the churches or temples 501c3. You must be separate, a separate entity. And you may not have any biases based on religious affiliation.
Next question. We are a nonprofit entity with multiple programs under one roof. I'm aware that we can only apply for one capital improvement grant and one public service grant. However, if we wanted to apply for both, do both applications have to be for the same program purposes, services, and/or services?
So let me be specific. If you are applying, you're one agency and you're applying for a capital project as well as public service. The capital project most likely has to be a public facilities project that is linked to that public service. You still can apply for public service, and that could be for a variety of different things. It could be for maybe leasing costs. It could be for staff salaries. You will need to fill out two separate applications, the capital application and then the public services application. I hope that answers your question, because anything further, I'm not quite sure without seeing an application as to what you're asking specifically.
I see a hand up. I don't know how to get to that.
They
And
must
it's not,
please
please
your
put your
questions
comments in the
chat.
chat
Yeah.
for me, and I'll get to it. All right, your next question. Does the ESG emergency shelter component include transitional shelters?
No. Transitional shelter is a term that HUD is not have articulated to us, is not really what we want to use ESG as funding for. So no.
Erica, this is from Sharon King. Erica, I picked up my certificate of good standing on January 18th, which will make it a little older than the 45 days mentioned in the application guidelines. Will this be okay, or do I need to pull another one closer to the March due date?
Sharon, you know the rules are the rules. I'm sorry about that. It will have to be, you have the perfect person reading your question. And also our director is here, but it needs to be 45 days within the application submission.
From Ellen Kunkel. So shelter renovation is not an eligible component.
No. And Ellen, I leave that there so that I may inform you guys. Some of you are bordering to entitlement communities, i.e., you may border Berwyn and you're in Cook County, you serve persons in non-entitlement Cook County, but you also may serve some Berwyn folks. And Berwyn may still offer renovation. You know that renovation is eligible, but it just depends on that particular that entitlement jurisdiction whether or not they offer. And right now, Cook County does not offer renovation.
This, Erica, question is from Reagan, sorry. Is a comprehensive park plan, master plan update an eligible project?
No.
And I think maybe one more. No, I think that was taken out. I think you're good, Erica.
Wow. Okay. Well, we want to thank all of you.
Oh, no, sorry. One more.
Okay.
This just came in. Does the grant support programs for youth, homework help, reading, tutoring, arts, etc.?
Yes. If you have a program that has already been tested, remember, we do not fund startups. If you have a program that you can demonstrate in your application that has been tested, meaning you have already provided this program, you've had individuals come through the program, you have some stories of beneficiaries from the program, that's wonderful. If you can demonstrate that to us in your application, please fill out an application.
Ellen has one more question, Erica. Our domestic violence shelter will be undergoing renovation during this time. Can we use funds for hotel vouchers for our clients who will have to shelter off-site?
Quite possible.
She said, sorry, hotel expenses for us to house them.
Quite possible.
Mhm. Another one, Erica, they keep coming in. Are
Mhm.
funding disbursements for the public service grants upfront, in advance, or reimbursement?
All CDBG, I'm sorry, I didn't put that in the presentation. All CDBG public service costs are reimbursement. CDBG through Cook County Department of Planning and Development is ran as a reimbursement program. So you must have the money upfront to run the program. And if the county saw your application and was like, oh my God, this is a great program, we must have it, we must bring this to Cook County, we will pay you for running that program under the eligible cost that we agreed to, but we will not provide the funds up front.
You have a couple more questions, but I do want to
Sure.
say Elizabeth did put in the chat, you could seek funds from ARPA. That would be from our home group that's run by,
Yes.
yes, not us, another
Thank you,
group.
Elizabeth. Thank you.
It's run by Carl Bradley, and he is in charge of the ARPA monies for program for household shelter or housing shelter,
Yes.
as well as fixed site shelter. So
Yes.
thanks, Elizabeth. Another question from Karen. What category do youth programs go under?
Youth programs are, you're not eligible for ESG. So you will be dealing with a CDBG public services application. And please read the guide and go through the guide, and you'll find more specifics there. But it is a public service activity. CDBG public service.
Erica, believe it or not, I think that's the last question.
All right,
If
you
I
guys.
missed anything, would you raise your hand if I did miss you? I think we're okay. Uh-oh,
Well,
no, I got something else, Erica.
that's fine.
No,
You have
Karen said thank you. All
Oh,
right.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for attending this workshop, and happy application filling now.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank,
Laura.
all right. Thank you.
Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.